Welcome to this session, which is going to deal with controls. We're going to discuss methods that control cards to the top to the bottom, individual cards, multiple cards, even controls to specific positions in the pack. Now, before we get into the details, let me state one thing. Besides, of course, excellent technical execution, good choice of the tricks the controls are being used, one thing is of utmost importance, and that's to convince our audience that the selection was absolutely free and that the card which has been put back into the deck is hopelessly lost. We're going to deal with the subject in two big parts. First part I call the 7 steps of a card control. We're going through each phase from the moment the card is being selected, through the replacement, the control, and its final use within a trick. The second part, we're going to look at individual controls that will solve most situations we are confronted with as performing conditions. So grab your pack and follow along. Let's start by looking through what procedure we are going from the moment the card is selected to the moment it's been controlled and used in a trick. There are 7 steps. First step is what I call the pre-control. That's the moments before we start anything. Almost every technique has a pre-moment. Then there is the phase of selection. There's a phase of replacement, the phase of location. There is the first delay. Then there is the actual control. Then there's the second delay. And finally, its use within a trick. So let's first look at the pre-control. Not every control technique will have a pre-control, but for instance, key cards. Using of key cards, which are wonderful means of controlling a card, of knowing where it is, has the necessity of knowing the key card. There are actually 3 types of key cards. They're called the visual key card, the tactile key card, and the conceptual key card. Now, the visual key card is the one you can see by the eye. So that could be a nail nick in the edge, it could be a scratch, it could be a point, it could be anything which is recognizable by the eye. The tactile key card would include corner shorts, scallop shorts, long or wide cards, and any type of card which you can locate by the feel alone. Thick card, for instance, wonderful tactile key card. And what I call a conceptual key card is a known key card which we place above, under, or even at a certain distance from the selected card. So depending on the type of key card you want to win, you will need, for instance, a glimpse. So all the techniques which are necessary to look at the card at the bottom, at the top, in the center and retainer break, etc. All of these go into this pre-moment, or the moment necessary to put a crimp into a card, to put a bridge into a card, to mark a card with a scratch, etc. Now, the ideal moment to do all of that is not just before you start the control, but even earlier, namely in the course of a preceding trick. That's, of course, if that's possible, and most of the time it is, that's the best way to hide the concept. So the pre-control really is a very important phase, and I'm always reminded of the mountain climber Reinhold Messmer when he talked about how he prepares for his big excursions, for his travels. He said, before I do the first step, I think of the last. And the good authors of novels say, before I write the first sentence, I already have the last sentence in mind. Well, that's the idea. Let's look at the second step, which is the moment of selection. Now, there is a few things which I'd like to point out here. For instance, there are moments of selection which are or feel rather restricted. So when we say, would you please say stop? Would you please stop when I dribble the card? Would you say stop when I shuffle the cards? Usually in all these procedures, the spectator gets one chance to have one card. Say stop, please take that card. That transfers a sense of restriction. So it occurred to me that to amplify or to delete that restriction, it could proceed like that. And I came up with what I called the this, that, or any other card strategy. So let me show, for instance, I say, would you please say stop when I Hindu shuffle the card? And then when you say stop, I would say, would you like this card, that card, or any other card? Same thing when I dribble the card. Say stop, would you like this card, that card, or any other card? Or when I deal packets on that, say stop, would you like this card, that card, or any other card? I hit upon that idea when studying Vernon's matching the cards, maybe one of the 10 best card tricks. Vernon's matching the cards. He had to force a king, and he had a king below and the king above the break. Then he would go into a force. I think he had a knife force, which we're going to look at in the session on forces. And he separated the pack, and rather than just saying, please take the card, he would say, would you like this card or that card? And they immediately thought, wow, that's a concept. So I applied this to see and created the this, that, or any other card strategy. Another way of giving the idea that the selection is very free, because that's really a very important step, the very first step before even controlling it, is shuffling the cards in the same space than where we're going to have the card selected, say stop or take a card, which looks much better than if I said, well, I shuffle the cards here and give the cards to select over here. I shuffle the cards here and give them for selection in the same space. So a very important part of convincing the spectator that this choice is free is, of course, trying to give as many options as possible. And the very obvious strategy, but which is very important, is simply hand the deck to the spectator, have him shuffle the card, have somebody else cut, then take it back, and only then start to have the card selected. That can considerably improve the sensation that the thing is innocent. Let me come still in this second phase of selection to the degrees of freedom. My very good friend and mentor, Ron Wall, who is sadly missed, first mentioned that to me. He published an essay in a German magazine in the 60s. And the theory is this, he said, the degree of freedom when you select a card should be close or ideally the same than the degree of freedom when you put it back. You think about it, there are from 0 to 100 different degrees of freedom of choosing a card. For instance, the freest way might be saying, please think any card, please name any card. Or go, take the deck, go outside of the room, shuffle the cards, and come back with one card. I mean, that's almost 100% freedom. The least free would be, I'm giving you a card, please take that card. You might laugh at this, but this is not so stupid as it sounds at first, because if you have a known card on top, and you do a false shuffle, a sort of in-jog shuffle, and you say, let me shuffle the cards, I'm going to cut the cards as well, I'd like you to take the card that happens to be on the top. Well, that's not so silly after all, it could be done. But on a scale from 100 to 0, it's close to 0. So, and in between, you can make a list if you like. You will have, please take a card, you're not involving yourself with the deck, then you take the deck in your hands, it's a little less freedom. Then you dribbling on the table, it's still a less freedom. Or dribble the cards in the hand, it's a little less freedom, isn't it? Because you're controlling them now in your own hands. So there are, if you can make a list and you will find a category of freedom. And the idea is that when you have the card replaced, and so as we will see in just a moment, should try to match the way the card was selected. So it's the moment to study how do I want the card to be selected, because afterwards I will need this specific procedure to control it. So we can either adapt the selection process to the control process or the replacement process, or the replacement process will be adapted to the selection process. Either way works. Let's pass to the third phase, which is the replacement phase. And this will give me a chance to give a few examples. Let's take 3 examples of how to implement the theory of degree of freedoms. So let's say I have a key card and I want to put that key card with a Hindu shuffle on top of the selection. Then it's maybe not such a good idea if I say, please take any card. There's quite a high degree of freedom, and afterwards I will say, and please put it back here. It's already a bit better if I start to shuffle and say, and as I shuffle, please say stop. But really the best way of doing it is to have the card selected using the Hindu shuffle procedure to begin with, of course, and that allows me even to implement the pre-control, which is the glimpse of the key card. So I'm using the Hindu shuffle glimpse. So I will start by saying to the spectator, would you please, as I shuffle the cards like that, say stop whenever you please. And as I did that, I glimpsed the bottom card, right? So I already have the card glimpsed. So it means I say, would you please say stop as I glimpse as I shuffle the cards. When he stops me, I will use the this, that, or any other card strategy. So we'll say, would you like this card, that card, or any other card, whichever he likes. Let's assume he's taking that card. And now, after he's replaced it, I can either drop the whole block on top, bringing the key card next to the selection, or I can do what we've already seen in the false shuffle session, that I can simply, in the first shuffle movement, extract a few from the bottom cards by looking up, and then I look down as I finish the shuffle. So I have played. So it's one example of using the Hindu shuffle as a means of selecting and replacing the card. Another technique would be to use the dribble. So here is, I would start to dribble the deck and say, would you please say stop whenever you please? Thank you, here, okay? And now I do the this, that, or any other card theory. And in that moment, I look at my key card. I say, would you like this card, that card, or any other one? And this is the moment, I turn around a little bit, this is the moment when I say this and that I can look at this card. That's very important. If I start by saying, would you like this card, the expectation is already created that that is going to be the other card. So this is a sort of misdirection, because the focus, the spectator's attention would go to this card. So would you like this card, or that card, or any other card? Regardless of which card he takes, I will be able to place my key card next to the selection. And a third last example of how to implement the theory of the degree of freedoms is in what I call the packet deal control. Again, I'm going for a key card, which is on bottom, or I can also have the key card somewhere in the lower third and hold the break. But as you will see, the most worry-free method is to have it simply on the bottom. Now I start dealing cards individually, maybe in packet, and as I do, I ask the spectator to stop me. When he stops, I implement the this, that, or any other card strategy. The spectator takes the card, whichever it is, and as he's looking at it, here's what I do. I reverse the spread. I mean, the easiest way is when he replaces the card to simply drop the remaining cards on top, and that brings the key card next to his card. A much better way is to do the reverse spread, look at the spectator and ask him a question, and then grab a few cards from the bottom, immediately following up with taking cards from the top. And even better than that is using the actus interruptus technique. Remember from our session about false shufflers. So when the spectator has replaced his card, I do my reverse spread, I look at him and ask a question, grab a few cards, but then interrupt the action, put it back, and say something else like, please don't forget your card, otherwise we won't have a finale. It's a standard gag, but it's very apropos in this moment. You've seen what I've done. I've replaced it on top, and now I restart the action, and it really looks as if I had taken this from the top, and this even more dissimulates the bottom deal of the packets. There's one more thing I would like to say for the replacement phase, and it's something I've only come up a few years ago. It's taken me almost 40 years to find that, and I'm very much ashamed that it took me so much time. And it addresses a problem you will agree we have many times when we have a card selected and replaced. And the problem is this. We have the card selected, and then, of course, we need them to put it back somewhere where we can locate and control it. So what do? We say, and would you please put the card back here? Or we say, and please put the card back here. Now, you will have experienced what I have experienced many times. As a spectator, will probably say, can I put it back here? Or can I put it back somewhere else? And that's not such a good situation. So it occurred to me that this could be avoided by using what I've called the logical replacement. And the logical replacement is nothing else than, regardless of the procedure used, stop when the spectator has taken the card, wait, and then have him replaced in the same space he decided in the first place. So here's how it could look. If I say, would you please take a card? Spectator takes a card, and rather than joining the spreads and re-separating them, I keep them like that. Now, I don't even have to say something. I just go like this, and just say, please, or thank you, or nothing, and the spectator will automatically just replace the card over here. The same thing if I do a dribble selection. I say, would you please say stop here, please? Stop here. I do this, that, or any other card strategy. Then when he takes the card, rather than closing and opening again, I keep the situation. And automatically the spectator, I just have to turn, look, you just go like this, and this will be sufficient. I call this the gesture of the Jedi. You don't say anything, you just make a small gesture, and the spectator will immediately follow the gesture of the Jedi. You go like this. And if necessary, you can say, put it back the same place you took it from. I mean, there's a big difference because he decided where to put it back by taking it in the first place from that spot. So I think that it's a small thing, but it's a small thing that can make a big difference. And you can apply this to practically all other ways of having cards selected. Also for a Hindu shuffle, say stop when it doesn't stop here, don't complete and restart. Another point I would like to mention, if you're using the kind of hand spread replacement or whatever it is, it's a very nice thing to have these open postures where the thumbs are extended like this, because in body language this says I have nothing to hide. So let's look at the next step, which is of course how to locate the card. So I call this the phase of location, because somehow you have now the card has been replaced, you have them somehow to take a break, you have to create a crimp, you put the key card on top, you jog it to the back, to the side, something. So this is the location phase. Let me talk about handling the break in this context. If you watch yourself in a mirror, you will see that, or if you watch a colleague doing that, please replace the card. When the card is replaced, look, you get that. You see that? Let's look at that very close up. You go that. For a moment, the deck opens up, because that's where you put your fingers in order to obtain your little finger or whatever finger break you need, or to prepare the side seal, or to prepare anything we're going to look a little later. So how can this opening, this little flash be avoided? Now I'd like to offer two techniques. The first technique I call the pushover. Once the card has been put back, the pack from the right hand is put on top, and the cards pushed over like that with the thumb. The cards are put flat on the cards, but to the right, pushed over, and because you have these fingers that touch the bottom card, this will automatically remain side jog to the right. But there is no telltale movement in the front. Look at that. Go like this. Now you change the grip to end grip, and it's only now that the fingers protect the outer end that the cards are squared and the break is picked up. The second technique I use is what I call the cult assistant, and it's an idea by Ed Marlowe, but David Solomon showed that to me, and he has some clever uses in other contexts, and I use it in this context, and here's how I do it. So if I use the approach of having a card selected by spreading the cards between my hands, I will cull a card, the fourth, the fifth, it doesn't matter which one, I cull it beneath the spread and have the card selected. So I wait, the logical replacement, and when the spectator has replaced his card, that when I put the right-hand cards on top, look, the cards on the left here will go immediately square, and it really looks as if the card was already lost. But we have the cult card, which is on the bottom, and when I again change grip to end grip, thus protect the outer end, I can now close the deck and thereby obtain the necessary break. Now the clever thing here is you can use this cult card to put it, as I did, right on top. But you could also just push the card a little bit over, and remember your card, please, don't forget it. And when closing the deck, put the cult card underneath, which means that if you now obtain a break under the cult card, and let's say bring it to the bottom with a cut or a shuffle, now the selection is second from the bottom. Now that can be very convenient. We come to the fifth phase, which is what I call the delay one phase. Delay one phase, it's a sort of a positive insertion, that's the way Arturo de Ascanio called it, between cause and effect, put in a break so the spectator can't associate the two. So in this case it means right after the card has been replaced and located, do not immediately control it, but use some kind of delay. The danger here is, of course, this delay must not be too long and not too involved, otherwise it will be not a positive but a negative insertion, because the spectator will forget his selected card. So use your judgment and good timing. Of course, the best way of using this strategy is to use a key card, because either way, whichever technique you've used to put the key card close to the selection, you can now drop the deck on the table. This is the no hands mar strategy. I say, whenever possible, in performing magic in general and card magic in particular, use the no hands mar strategy. I put that in secret agenda, and that means get the cards out of the way and say something, do something. The idea very often will be, depending on the trick of course, that spectators will say, he didn't even touch the cards, and so that's a very good thing. The important thing here is you want to maintain control over the cards at every moment. You don't want the spectator to grab the card. So how to do that is to put the deck in a personal zone. The personal zone is about this. No spectator really dares to come into your personal zone. Sometimes you will have to extend that. So another way of extending the personal area is to use, for instance, the box, which belongs to the card, and everything belongs to you. So even that's a little bit further away. People will hesitate to penetrate your personal zone. Another way of doing it, if you, let's say you're here, you're putting like that, is to gesture, to bend forward and to say something like this. So this, where your shadow, so to speak, falls onto the area, that's your personal area. It's very difficult that somebody will come in and grab that. There are, of course, specific techniques that you can use in this delay. So let's assume you're having a break above the three of hearts, is your thing, which is a step. So a step closes a break, but still creates a configuration of the cards which will allow you to later pick up the break again. So step simply means shifting the packet askew like this. This can be done with one hand. If you have the break like so, the little finger, you can simply close. You go like this. You simply close your finger, and the upper packet will move over, and you'll have this configuration here. You can dissimulate the step if you, let's say, and you can help yourself with the other hand. I always use two hands for the step because you can accompany the movement of the upper part of the deck to form the step. So you have quite a large step, you know. I like to have the step like that. The nice thing about the steps is that if you're holding the deck in end grip, this line does not disturb the configuration, and neither does this line. So these are the two tolerant lines. You can do anything here, you can do this, and you still will maintain the stepped configuration of the cards. So you put that down, and you give the top cards, pull them back a little bit, and you pull the whole deck a little bit down, so you get you know, a sort of unorganized configuration. And if you look at that, it's almost impossible really to detect the step if you don't know it. And afterwards, you just pick up on the two lines and just pull down with your little finger and re-establish the break. And from here on, we see how to control the card. An extremely clever way of handling the step is combining it with a fan. That's in Louis Ganson's Vernon's Ultimate Secrets of Card Magic, and I put it in Card College Volume 3. So you have, let's say your 10 of hearts is your selected card. You have a break above it. You convert the break into a step, like we've explained it right now. And then you form a fan. Now this really looks disorganized. You close the fan, again, with the little finger on this line of tolerance. And you can do this, you can do that. But when you go back, you have, again, very, very easy to feel. It's not so easy to see, but if you pull down, it's very easy to feel. So if you don't even have to look, you just pull down, automatically your little finger will engage into the step, and you will re-establish the break of the correct card. This brings us to phase number 6, which is the actual control. And that's where the literature sets in normally in books and DVDs, everywhere. You have controls that are being explained. That's where they set in. And we are going to discuss that in the second part. So we can immediately go to the last, to the 7th phase, which is the phase of dissuasion, the second delay phase. Because I think if you have a card replaced, do whatever clever move you're able to do and immediately palm the card, whatever, and then reproduce it instantly from somewhere or have the effect. Well, it is normally, always exceptions, but normally, in my opinion, it will be less magical. Not only because the spectator doesn't have the time to be involved with his imaginary world, you know, and create the impossible in his mind, which is very important, but also because the cause, which is the control, and the effect, which is the revelation of the card, are so close in time. So how can we try to separate them without losing time? Of course, we don't want to do that, without becoming boring and without unnecessarily stretching the thing. The best solution is usually using a very good trick. The trick in itself solves the problem. For instance, let me take again Vernon's Triumph. In Vernon's Triumph, the card is controlled to the top. The cards are then shuffled because the spectator says, oh, excuse me, can I shuffle the cards? So that introduces a conflict. The cards are shuffled by the spectator, apparently. I mean, you do it for him in the story. Then the cards are being shown that they are alternating. They are being shown that there is complete chaos. And then after a little while, the magic gesture, whatever, brings the card into one direction and the selection is being revealed. Now, all these proceedings that include a shuffle, of course, help enormously to separate the moment of the control from the moment the card is being used in the effect. And that's, of course, the most intelligent way of putting that dissuasion phase after the control. But let me mention another two things. One which I call the caps show. I put this in my book, Confidences. I call this the caps show. It was showed to me by my dear friend Tony Cacciadini of Barcelona. It's what you saw Fred Capps do, and it's a very simple thing. It's a beautiful little thing to do once or twice, not more. So once the card has been controlled, and you want to say, so your card is now between the top card and the bottom card, anywhere nobody has an idea, something like that. So this is between the top and the bottom card is a wonderful little ploy. There's no preparation, it's not a double or a triple lift. You simply go and just grab a few cards. There usually be 2 or 3 cards. There's 3 cards here. Just grab it in the moment, in the movement. This is very elegant. Look at the movement. You get into end grip, you go like this, you go like that, you go, and then you show the bottom, and then you can dribble the cards in your other hand or just spread them on the table. So again, no hands ma introduced that moment as well again. Another ploy to be used, and the old-timers use it all the time. If you read the old books of magic, the common strategy was to control the card, usually with a pass, then to palm the card, and then to hand the card out to be shuffled. And then the palm card will be replaced, taking them back, and only then would the card be used in a specific effect. That, I think, is probably one of the most marvelous ways of handling that problem. So right after the card has been controlled, it's a good idea to glimpse the card. So you can use my riffle glimpse like this. You're holding a little break underneath the top card, and when you riffle the card, look at that. It's a wonderful way of seeing the index after about half the cards have been riffled off. So it's one way of doing it. If it's on bottom, of course, it's even easier. You can make a gesture, all around square up glimpse, and many of the glimpses which are which you can find in the literature. So glimpsing a card is a very good insurance against any type of mishaps that can occur. For instance, you lose the card before you produce it in the effect, or a spectator will say, excuse me, can I shuffle the card? In all these cases, you can say, sure, please, be my guest. So this concludes this first part where we have looked at the 7 steps, the 7 phases that take place from the moment we prepare for a selection, over the selection, the control, and its use. Now in the second part, let's look at various controls. So let's now look at various methods of controlling a card. Let's start out by what I call the break control. Now, I've never really used what is called the break shuffle, which is an alternative to the in-jog or out-jog shuffle. When you're controlling top stocks, for instance, you have an in-jog or an out-jog usually, and that's how you get to your control. You can do that also with a break. So instead of getting an in-jog, you're just holding a break, which is a very interesting technique, which I see very few people using. And it occurred to me that it could be used for a control as well. So, of course, it was mistaken like so often, because after I had published this idea in my book Confidences, I found that a gentleman by the name of Bill Kalman, he had a card control in Genie of April 1950. So you see, so that's as far back as the control goes. It wouldn't surprise me if it goes even further back. And here's how it works. We start out again by trying to use the same degree of freedom when it is selected, when it's replaced. So since I need the card to be replaced like that, I will start by saying, would you please, as I shuffle the deck like so, say stop whenever it pleases you. Spectator will stop me. I will use this, that, or any other strategy. Spectator will take the card. In this instance, We shall assume it is the 10 of diamonds, replaces it back. According to the rule of the logical replacement, remember, I do not join and start over again, but I keep the hands separated. So once he's put back his card, I simply continue the shuffle, look like that, and thereby hold the break. Now once I have the break, we can see how to go from there. I can shuffle to the break, I can cut to there, or use any other ploy we're going to look at a little later. So here's how it works. It's almost automatic. As you shuffle, the cards are in over and shuffle position. When you offer it to the spectator, then it will, for replacement, then the packet automatically slides in dealing position. Look, we'll do this in slow motion. Throw a packet, it can be 7, 8 cards, doesn't matter really. Just it has to be done to keep the momentum. You just throw them, and when you do that, you will see that the cards fall in a staggered configuration. So they'll be quite strongly beveled. And that very easily allows the tips of the little finger, the ring finger, and the middle finger to touch the face card, and they will automatically stay there. So you can continue the shuffle. It has a little bit of a sloppy appearance, right? So it might not be a control everyone will like, but I think you don't have to be then green to be able to use that. I think it's a very, very good move. Well, once you're here, your options are open. I like to square, delay for a moment. We've seen it before. We can put it on the table, we can step, we can fan, we obtain, and then shuffle off to the break, for instance. Or something which is even better, once the spectator has replaced his card, we just shuffle. We say shuffling is good, but of course cutting is better. We have our break, and we just cut in small batches to the table until we reach the break. This will be our selection, and it lands on top. Now we do it's not on top, it's between the top and the bottom card, somewhere in the deck, and we have a beautiful control. So that's the break shuffle control. Let's now talk about the Macmillan control. There's a wonderful book that is available always an ebook, but it's by Michael Landers, just called Macmillan. Jack Macmillan, meaning the magic of Jack Macmillan. When I read that, I thought it's a wonderful idea. And the way Michael Landers describes it, very, very briefly said, Macmillan's favorite control was to put the selection back on the top of the deck and use an Erdnase in-jog shuffle. So what it is, you simply put the selected card back on top and then use some kind of top stock control shuffle. In the case of the Erdnase shuffle, it would be an in-jog shuffle, so in-jogging the first card or a block of cards, shuffle off, and then either cut to the in-jog or shuffle to the in-jog, which will bring the card back on top. So I thought, well, that's an interesting idea. How could you stage that, to make this feel and look good? And here is what I came up with. It's an ideal, a very practical tabletop control. So whenever you're performing close up at the table, I think it's a very good, behind the bar, whatever, it's a wonderful control. And here's how it works. You hand the deck to the spectator, please shuffle the cards, cut the cards, take them back. Remember, a minor but important point. And now spread the cards on the table and ask the spectator to pull out any card you like. Now, you have to avoid that the spectator takes the card out just directly. He has to pull it out. So I say, just pull it out with your finger and you stop them. And the reason to stop them is to say, so there are 52 cards, so you have another 51 cards you could choose from, And this is a little excuse to stop him. And now I need a reason to pick up the deck. And the reason is, and of course, you've decided not to take any of these, but exactly that card. Then I turn away, and as I turn away, I don't even look at the card. I grab the card and say, please all remember that card. Don't forget it. And now I replace it on top and immediately go into an in-jog shuffle, which brings the card back to the top eventually. So to finalize, I would like to draw your attention to this very important fact. If you have a card selected, whichever mean, and they take it in their hand, it's, in my opinion, too late for that type of control, because now you are forced to take the card from them and you put it on top and you do whatever you do. And that's, in my opinion, it's no good. So you have to avoid in this control that the spectator takes the card, but still convince them that the selection first is absolutely free and that the replacement is absolutely haphazard and innocent. So that's the idea, and that's why I spread the card. I let them pull out the card, and they never take it in their hand. And this is very elegant. You go like this, and you can either put it on top or use what I call the lateral insertion, which is a way lay people would insert cards into the deck. You know, very few lay people would go and do insertions like this or insertions like that. If you ask somebody, put that card, stick that card back into the deck, you'll probably go the easiest way, which is sticking it back like this. So I identified that, and we're going to see how we can even control multiple cards with it. And the nice thing about the lateral insertion, besides being such an intuitive and natural handling, is that it allows you to pick up the break above or below the card in a very immediate way. It's very well covered with the hand which grabs the deck and end grip, and just pull them in and push up. Now from here on, one of the most elegant, most practical and safest way of getting the card to the bottom is the Erdnase Vernon post-peak overhand shuffle control. Neither Erdnase nor Vernon have called it that way, but I gave it that way when I put it in Card College Volume 1, because I really do think that's a wonderful thing. And here is how it works. You have your break, and you can use this with any other break you have obtained, of course, for a selected card. So here's how it works. If you grab the deck like so, and you put your thumb in a parallel position, I'm going to turn it around a little bit so you can appreciate this. If you turn it out in this position, and now you bring your thumb at right angle, look at what happened. The opening has gone like 4 times as big. This is a huge thing. So, and instead of moving the hand like so, what you're doing is you let the deck slide into overhand shuffle position. Mechanically speaking, this does exactly the same thing. Whether you do that, or whether you hold the hand naturally and then just drop the deck. Look at that. You could drive a truck through that break. So that's the reason why you have to go immediately into the shuffle, which is very easy. You shuffle off at the break directly, just grab and drop, shuffle off the rest, and then it's a point that I've been using a lot in my shuffles in the past years. You Greek or weave shuffle the cards there, and you can follow up with another shuffle where you Greek or weave shuffle the cards like this, because the bottom card will always stay in the bottom. Now you can either leave them up jogged, change the grip and obtain your break, or you can in jog them, or if you like out jog them, and then immediately bring them back to the bottom with another shuffle. So that's a wonderful combination that will fool even knowledgeable people. Let's spend now a minute in talking about the double undercut control, because that's a control that many people are using, and even top experts are using it. Juan Tamariz is using this all the time. And I once questioned him. I said, well, don't you think it's strange, to have the card replaced and cut it there? And we had a discussion about that. And I think if it's well understood and well done, it's a great control. So here is the way I would recommend it to be handled. The card is being selected. Let's again take our ace of spades. The card is being replaced. By any of the techniques we have discussed, we obtain a break above it. Now the double undercut control, as the term says, would consist in doing a double undercut to the break. That is, if I turn around like this, cutting a portion from the bottom to the top, cutting add the break to the top, and it's back on the top, right? So a first method of bettering that is, of course, to delay the moment of the cut after you have replaced it. That's what we have already seen before in the 7 steps. So have a step, do a fan or whatever. And the second thing is introduce maybe some kind of verbal strategy. In this case, where the card was selected by spreading the cards between the hands, I could say, I know what you think. You think, when I spread the cards, I'm counting the cards. So I know exactly that it's now at 30th position from the top. Now, this is not true, but if it bothers you, we can mix the cards. We even give them a real good shuffle. And of course, no shuffle is good if we don't at least give it 7 cuts. There you are, and you've controlled your card to the top. So that's using a verbal strategy. And another way of making the double undercut control look good, in my opinion, is, let's put that aside, it's going to be our selected card, is to shuffle the card in a space, have the card selected, whichever way you prefer, applying all the strategies we've seen up to here, have the card replaced. Now close the deck, and at the same time we keep our break. Then we go back into another area, and it's here, we wait a moment, a little delay, and then say, okay, let's mix the cards. And you do the double undercut in a different space than the shuffling took place, and use the wording, we are mixing the cards. And then you go back to the space which was associated with the overhand shuffle, and do a shuffle, an in-jog shuffle, a lift shuffle, whatever shuffle you like, and say, and really shuffle and cut the deck, and here, go like that. So this is an interesting concept, I think, within disc control, that is to associate spaces with information, bring that together to better anchor that in the memory of the spectator, and thereby achieving a better deception. Let's come to what I've dubbed the parallel shift. Now, of course, the shift, you can go on for hours. There are, when Vernon made in his little notebook a list of the passes, that I know 30 different passes. And nowadays, when you look at Dennis Baer's archives, you have over 120 different passes and shifts. So, but most passes have a disadvantage, have a dangerous angle. I mean, there is no pass, there's no shift that is perfect from every angle. That's clear. But there are some which are more tolerant. And I think this is one of the most tolerant shifts, whether you are sitting or standing up and your audience sitting. And here is how it looks. Let's say we have a card selected, the Queen of Hearts, and they say, let's spread the cards here on the table. And the card has been brought to the top. So let's look at the technical details. I like to pick up the break in the lower part of the deck. Ideally, it's about the lower third. Yeah? So let's assume we have here the 8 of clubs. The deck is squared. This is embedded in an action. It can be done just in a squaring action like so, and you bring it to the top. But I believe it's much better to incorporate it in an action like this, where you say, let's spread the cards. Would you please, sir, take a card? It's even better. Not just spread the deck as such, but for a reason. Let's look at the mechanics of this parallel shift. I'd like to have the break at about the bottom part of the deck. About the third is just good. Hold the break. And now, as the term says, a parallel shift, this whole packet is shifted about half an inch to the right. So it's about 1.5 centimeters to the right, 2 centimeters. And this is done in an almost imperceptible action of the left fingers. They're simply stretching out, doing this movement, and they go this situation. This packet is being grabbed diagonally, like so, between the thumb and the little finger. We are going to see a very similar grip when we talk about the side steel. So this is a little motion, and as the motion takes place, the deck is beveled. That will avoid that the spectator sees a part of the deck vanishing. If I did that, you see, that suddenly a part of the deck vanishes. If I keep this in closed end grip, which is more or less like this, closed end grip, all three fingers hold the outer end, I can shift this part and nothing changes from the front. And since from the left you have there is a slight bevel, it's very hard for a spectator, even on the left, to see the thickness, the exact thickness of the deck. Now, depends on the situation. If you have spectators on your left, you might want to turn to the spectator furthest to your left and direct your forefinger to his right ear, because that's the angle he will not be able to see. All other angles are perfectly covered. And since there is no dipping motion like in the classic pass, the Hermann pass, the angling is very good. So now the upper packet is being clipped in the fork of the thumb and the forefinger, and then in a parallel action, and then like in an elevator, goes up and is brought back onto the other packet. And the nice thing here, of course, is that the fingers do not leave the cards, but when they're about in this position, the packets are already free to transpose. So this is really a relatively simple mechanical action. The packet slides along as it is held here by the left hand, slides along like so, comes on top. So that's about 50% of the move. The other 50% is the larger action. That's what the spectator sees. So one of the best I find is to start to move to the left in order to do the spread, and the left packet advances, the top packet advances faster, and the two packets join each other when the leftward movement is stopped, and the rightward movement cancels the impression of that, because that's the sentence, that's the full stop. I spread the cards. That's my utterance and gesture. And then there are several other handlings which we're going to look at when we discuss the palm and the side steel, and they have to do with the motivation for a good excuse for the right hand to touch the deck in the first place. So it's like dribbling the cards or spreading them briefly. Now the squaring up motion here is a perfect cover for the execution of the parallel shift. So that's the parallel shift, and I find it wonderfully direct, simple and safe control, and it's one of the best and most versatile passes in my opinion. Let's discuss the golden pass. Now there's a little bit of a misnomer because it's not really a pass, as we will see. And of course it comes from Horace Golding, the famous illusionist who also did some close-up magic. And it was first published by Victor Farelli, 1950, in an issue of Hugo's Magic Monthly. And there he relates that Horace Golding had fooled him several times before 20 years ago. He would never tell him how it works. And then they met again, and he would say, well, let me show you how this is done. And originally it was done as a move for magicians. And the move was this, that the card would be replaced, the packets would be joined, and immediately the classic pass was executed, and the face of the upper packet shown. Now supposedly this, what the spectator was supposed to see, that the card was put back, and the spectator and the performer would do that. So every magician would recognize that it's the old key card placement. It was very, very badly done. But then, of course, they would be surprised when they saw that the card would be controlled to the top. So as such, Golding never meant it to be a real control. And it was Juan Tamariz who showed me many years ago how he would handle this situation, and it became a very practical and easy to execute and safe control, in my opinion. So here's how it is. So the card is again selected by any procedure you favor: a shuffle, a stop, a dribble, a spread, and the break is being retained. Let's again go back to our friend, the Queen of Hearts. And now the situation is this, as we say, your card is somewhere in the pack. Here, or maybe it's here or here, anywhere in the pack. And in this series of actions, it has been controlled to the top. That's an interesting thing, because although you're using the classic pass, you really by no means have to be a master of the classic pass. You do not have to execute the classic pass invisibly. There are only a few people in the world who can do this anyway. So here are the mechanics of it. It's beautifully disguised. The break. And the first action occurs as a cut with a classic pass grip. So like in the classic pass, the little finger is really inserted into the break. So you can hinge this packet hinges up. However, you don't do any movements as you would in the classic pass. You simply, the fingers of the left hand just keep this packet controlled. And the other hand just lifts up the lower packet. This flips up and down. You show the bottom card and say, it's not this card, neither this card, nor that card. And then you can follow up, if you like, with the caps show by saying, so your card is somewhere between the top and the bottom card. Nobody knows exactly where. So let me show this again. This is truly it's a good idea if in this pass the card to be controlled is a bit in the upper portion of the deck. So the first pass, the packet that hinges, is not so big, right? So here is the action. Your card is somewhere in the pack. So very deceptive, very nice move. Let's look at still another type of pass I came about when practicing something totally different. And here's the way it looks. A card is being selected. Let's say, for a change, it's 3 of diamonds. It's being replaced, put back into the deck, really lost. This is a very clean situation. The deck is reassembled, everything is clean and innocent, and I will ask a spectator, are you right or left-handed? Would you be so kind and take the deck in your right hand as a right-handed person? And that's where the card has been controlled to the top. Now I call this the accidental pass, because it happens, and it will have happened to you many times. You pick up the deck from the table, especially if you have you don't have a mat, if you have a hard surface, that you leave a few cards on the table, right? So what do you do then? You just grab them and put them back. So I thought, oh, that's an interesting situation. If I could cut exactly at a specific spot the card has been replaced, well, then I have an automatic control. And that's how I conceive that. I use a bridge. Now a bridge is a sort of a bend, it's a crimp. And the crimp is put in on one end. So you don't crimp the whole packet, you keep the cap straight, you just crimp the inner end. So this can easily be done, for instance, by just dropping a few cards and closing the fingers like so. So that's quickly. Or you can do the beginning of a Hindu shuffle. I do this in slow motion now, since I already have my bridge here. Do the first one, and as you do the first one, give it a strong crimp. Immediately follow up and do an all-around square up, bringing the bridge to the back. So whichever way you want to do that, you have your bridge at the back, and here is the way, one way it could be handled. This is one way it could be handled. Spread the pack, have a card selected, retake the spread, swing cut about half of the deck or a third of the deck, depending where the context of the trick, of course, have the card replaced, drop the whole thing on top, which is very clean, although it does not exactly comply with the degree of freedom. But now you're going to catch up, because now I can spread the deck like that, and I can resume the situation by saying the deck was shuffled, because spectator could have shuffled before you put in the bridge, right? You have taken one card, everybody looked at it, and you put it back. It's true, he did put it back, but he didn't put it back like so. He put it back when I cut the pack. But since the final picture is exactly what I'm saying, and all what I said before is true, except one statement which is half true, the whole thing goes through very well, and I can assure you, you can even fool knowledgeable people with it. Now you're in perfect position here with your bridge, which I think you will be able to see. There you are. And now you all need to have a little excuse. Of course, this will be provided by the context of the trick. So if somebody has shuffled before, maybe somebody else will have to deal cards, or will name a number, or do something else. So I address the person, and without looking, I go for the deck, and I cut to the bridge. Now the way to cut into the bridge is not to try to cut directly into the bridge, but to grab the whole pack, which has been set down squared. That's an important prerequisite, is squared, the cards are well squared. And now grab the whole deck just a few millimeters lifted from the table, and then relax the pressure. Automatically the deck will break at the bridge. This is a technique to use if you want to cut at the crimp or any other card that offers this type of advantage. Now, without looking, I will address and sort of, I don't even have to say something. It's a secondary. It's an in-transit action. It's really, if it's well done, this is really a big fooler. And of course now it will depend on what you're doing. It's a good idea to have an effect. So a good way is to tell a spectator, name any number and your card will move to that number, which is an incredible claim in a way, you know. But we have our card which is on top, and the spectator will say whatever, 9 for instance, he will start to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and when he comes to the 9th card, just tell him, do you really believe it's possible that the shuffled deck, when you put your card anywhere, is now exactly at the number you set? Of course, every person will say no, it's not possible. Have him look at the card and it won't be his card. Now, as you say, of course it's not possible, you know why? And everybody say, why? And why are you saying that? You're just taking the whole lot and putting it back because you didn't believe in it. You have to believe in it, otherwise it doesn't work. Now here's where the method of Emile Coué comes, the self-hypnosis, where you stand in front of the mirror and say, from day to day, in every way, I'm going to be better and better. We can use this ploy to find your card. Put your finger on the deck, and now you say, I believe, on something, you find your formula, that my card can go to the 9th position. So that's very amusing. And after that, you make magic gesture, you have the spectator count again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and will of course fall into his card. Now, although this is an old chestnut, you can find this in children's book, coupled with this control in particular, and coupled with the Emile Coué presentation, which comes from an old German books from the 1930s, exactly with that trick. I mean, all this put together will give excellent results. And that was the accidental pass, which I originally dubbed Bridge Control and published in my own secret agenda on January 29. Now let's end this part with the single card controls with an example of a whole category. And the category is that of mathematical controls. Mathematical controls have an ugly and a beautiful part to them. The beautiful part, of course, is you don't have to do anything. It's very clear-cut. There is no manipulation. There's no sleight of hand that can be detected. It's perfect to be done when you have a very skeptical spectator who's watching every move. Of course, the uglier part is that it is procedural. You have to go through certain procedures, usually of counting. Now, that's not really a problem, provided we don't do it too often and it is elegantly justified with the presentation of the trick. So let's look at this particular method, which will control the card to the 21st position. As you will see, the nice part of this, it's so flexible, you can control it really to any position in the deck, but what you need is a way to justify it. So a nice way to justify any type of counting procedure or number procedure is to bring in numerology, and saying, of course, there are parasciences like astrology, numerology. Anybody is in numerology, and some people have never heard of it, some people know exactly what it is, and some people don't know exactly what it is. So you don't have to give a lecture on the subject. Maybe it's sufficient to say in numerology, of course, numbers play an important part. And let me demonstrate with a deck of cards. So that prologue is already sufficient. You don't even have to tell a story with the proceedings of the trick now, but let's see an example. So I would have the deck shuffled by a spectator by saying, in a numerological sense, the order of the cards is now haphazard. So that makes sense. And now I will say to the spectator, I would like you to take a card, but according to the science of numerology, you never do it like that. You must have a number. Now, of course, there are people who will immediately say 7 or 12, some mystical numbers. So I do not want to rely on these statistical preferences you might have. So let's really make this a hazard choice of number. Cut off a small packet of cards. So since the deck has been shuffled, you can't know the order, nothing. Spectator will cut off. Let's assume he's cutting off a packet. I will do that for you. And I turn away and ask him, would you please count the cards? Thus obtaining your numerological number that is going to play an important part. So he's going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So he will have to remember 10. Everybody who's watching the count knows that it's 10. I, of course, do not know it, and I don't need to know it. He can hide the cards. He can put them in his pocket or somewhere. It doesn't matter. The only reason for the cutting was to get him a number. And everything has been coherent. Now I can take the rest of the packet and I'm going to show you the cards one by one, and I'd like you to remember the card that falls to your position. Now with the numerology and everything, this makes perfect sense. So I start to count and show the cards clearly. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that I'm going to turn it over. So we have an easier point of reference, King of Diamonds, and I continue to a number less of the position I like it to. So this particular trick, I'd like to have it at 21st position, so I'll count off 20 cards. So I will, of course, pretend not to know, that's the 10. I continue the count, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and when I arrive at 19, a number before the number I want, I will look at the spectator and say, is that okay? So the reason now I'm doing this is that the stopping of the dealing doesn't look so predetermined. It's like when you're stopping a car, you don't stay on the brake, otherwise you make that. You go on the brake and then you leave the brake so that you have an elegant stop. So this is a good point. And once he says, yes, I've seen my card, you could take the whole packet and just drop it on top. That would make it entirely self-working. But we are a little bit more refined. So rather than just dropping it on top, which you can do, we just insert it into the center and we push it in diagonally, which means that if rather than pushing in the center, we push a little bit off center, here is what happens. I get this configuration obviously perfectly covered by the right hand. I can now pull down with the little finger and have my break above the counted block, 20 cards. Now, look how automatically pleasing the spectator himself will control the card for us. We simply say, and would you now please return your cards so that the pack is complete again. So I dribble the cards to the break, and I have him replace his cards. I apparently complete the deck but retain a break here, and can now either shuffle or cut them off. For instance, in a triple cut on the table, that's a perfectly legitimate way of doing it. And if I like, I can now add a top stock fourth shuffle, although the top stock is quite big, it's 21 cards. And this particular trick, I can now come back to numerology and ask for instance, if I'm at a birthday party, I can ask, when is your birthday? Oh, we're going to celebrate it now. So if it's maybe the host of the thing. And I say, everybody sing with me, happy birthday. And so I go, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear George. Happy birthday to you. And the last syllable will fall onto the selected card. And you just turn it over and say, happy birthday, George. Thank you very much. You can keep this as a souvenir. I sign it for you or something, and you have a wonderful trick. We're moving over to multiple card control, where several cards are being controlled at the same time. Now, for explanation purposes, I'm going to use the 4 aces. Here is a control. The first one I want to discuss is the lateral insertion multiple shift. And my wife Barbara owes credit for that, because we were playing cards, and the Swiss card game, you usually get the cards of the same value together, and absent-mindedly she was putting in the cards like so. And I had never seen her do that before. That's where this lateral insertion, which I mentioned before, occurred to me. And I said, well, that's not only a very simple and natural and intuitive handling of cards, it's also a very simple, direct and easy, as well as a safe multiple shift control. Because here's what you do. You just insert the first one and retain a break, as we've explained before. So you have your break, take the next one, and simply pull down with the little finger. To protect that, you have to turn a little bit. Let's assume you have a few spectators over there. So you can have the spectator here look at the cards. Are the aces okay? Let's put them back somewhere. And each time it's in there, you can open it up to everyone. Because the side jocked card will, of course, allow you to now pick up the break again. So we do the same thing. And we keep doing that. You can do a little pause, then do that again. So once we have the break, we can use any of the techniques and strategy we've seen up to here. My favorite is always the Vernon Erdney's post-peak overhand shuffle control, simply controlling them like that. And that brings our 4 cards, in this case, to the bottom. Of course, it's easy to bring them to the top with another shuffle, like so. So this control is good for top or bottom controls. Let's look at yet another way of controlling several cards and at the same time having them selected. Because that's the first problem, of course. How do you select the cards and how do you replace them? We're going to come back to this problem a little later. So I dubbed this method the bluff multiple shift, and it was originated by a gentleman whose name is Norm Houghton. He published that in Abra in March 1966, and also in his book Wiz and Wizardry. And it is a beautiful control because it combines economical way of selecting cards and immediate control. You can do it stand up without a table, so it is especially nice for parlor or stage situation. And here's how it could look. There are variations we're going to discuss in just a minute. The deck is obviously shuffled. The spectators can do, they get it back. I ask the first spectator, sir, would you please be so kind and say stop whenever it pleases you? The spectator looks at the first card, let's say it's the Queen of Clubs. We're completing the deck. I go to the second spectator, sir, would you say stop here at this place? Would you please look at the card? And I go to a third spectator, would you please be so kind and say stop and look at that card? We have the third card, the 2 of Clubs. The deck is completed. It's giving honest looking shuffle. We can even, if we have a table available, do some cutting. So we can even apply the no hands theory. The deck is on the table and it doesn't seem as if we were involved in any way. But we have controlled the 3 cards in order on the bottom of the deck. So here are the mechanics of this shuffle. Let me take the aces to better explain that. The first selection is absolutely free. I'm going to force to the ace now to myself so we can get to the ace. Spectator number 1 says stop wherever it pleases him. And this is absolutely innocent. Of course, it's a wonderful moment because we can establish the whole action as being harmless, because afterwards we're going to use the riffle force. So while I show the bottom card to the spectator, the left little finger obtains a break on the top card. Now this is a beautiful situation because the body language is very open, the card is in a vertical position, and even people sitting far in the back in a stand-up situation can see the card very well. Now comes a wonderful ploy that has 2 great advantages. First of all, I do not need to pick up a break on this card because I already have one. So that's really a worry less. Second thing, this very fact allows me to slap the card on top, which gives a nice sound and bring the deck to elevated dealing position, which further separates the replacement from the location by means of the break. We can simply repeat this procedure for as many cards as we like. I recommend no more than 4, maximum 5 cards. So the procedure is I riffle down with the thumb and I do the riffle force, which we're going to see in more detail in the riffle in the force session. I separate apparently the deck, grab all the cards above the break and show the next card. While I move up, I have a nice misdirection of movement, nice misdirection of attention, and I can get a break on the next card. So that was the second card. I have 1, 2, they go back, riffle to there, and so on until I have, for instance, in our case, going to be the 4 aces, and I have my break, go back, shuffle them to the bottom, do whatever if I need, a false cut, and they are back on bottom. Now instead of using riffle force procedure, we could also use a dribble force procedure. In this case, it might be fitting because it looks even more open. However, it has more angles to protect. But other than that, it's mechanically speaking almost the same thing. The first selection, beautiful again, is absolutely free. As I show up, get the break, I can do the slap and square up. Then I will force to the break, show the next card, pick up the break, slap and square, do the force to the break, etc. And when I'm ready, just control the block of cards to the bottom. So I think that's a very useful, practical, direct, and safe control. Let's take a few moments to now discuss one of the oldest, one of the great classics of the multiple shift, the Vernon multiple shift, which has been published for the first time in a table course already in the 30s, and which will allow me to discuss a few fundamental problems attached to every type of multiple shift. Now, the first problem is, of course, why should we take some cards out of the deck in order to put them back again? which is what's happening in over half of the tricks that need a multiple shift. Now, the best and foremost reason, and that's the one we have seen in the bluff multiple shift, is to have cards selected. That's an absolutely logical way, either whether you do it with the mechanics we used before, whether you're having cards physically pulled out and then pulled back. That's a very good reason to do it. Actually, although it does cost time to have cards taken and put back, in the correct settings, this does not matter as long as the procedure is kept, at a certain rhythm and the whole thing makes sense dramatically. So nowadays there are more and more situations where magic is being performed in formal situations. Formal situations means people are paying to see us and they are willing to stay. In these situations, all procedural things are more acceptable, as if you did table-to-table magic in a restaurant. There you need fast, snappy and visual methods. And that is true for any method, as it is true for any presentation, as it is true for any trick. There is no technique, presentation or trick that you will be able to use in all of the situations, all of the time. Everything is specific. And of course, it's good judgment and professional experience that tells you when to use what. So having cards selected is one justification. Another one is, for instance, having, let's say we want to do a 4-ace trick or whatever, a 4-of-a-kind trick, to have anybody in the audience shout out a 4-of-a-kind. Madam, sir, would you please name your favorite 4-of-a-kind? Now that's a good reason. She says the aces, the queens, or the twos, whatever she says. Now I can take the cards out and show them. Why should I take them out? Well, maybe because I have them signed, which is another very good rationale. Have the cards signed, hand 4 pencils to 4 people, which is more interesting, it's more interactive. Yes, have each one put their name or today's date or the time, or someone puts his initials, the other one puts the time, the third one puts the date, and the fourth one puts the city you're performing in, something like that, These are all wonderfully involving, you're involving the audience, you are situational, and it's always interesting and engaging. So that's another reason. Another reason is to say, what I'm going to show you now, ladies and gentlemen, will use these 4 aces. And many have come to me and have said, there is only one solution how you can do that. You have many aces more. Now, in order to avoid you thinking, sir, would you please take the rest of them, make sure there are no other aces? So that's another reason. If you think about it, you can make a list of reasons. But the important thing is this is a problem, and you have to find solutions, elegant solutions that fit you and your trick. Now the next question with almost any multiple shift is, how are we going to replace these cards in the pack? Now we magicians, we love this type of putting back because they allow us some beautiful handlings, but I do not stop on insisting that it does not matter what our reality is. It only matters what the reality in our audience's minds is. And that's the only thing we should be interested in. So I don't care how many beautiful methods there are. In my experience, really the most visual and best way of replacing 4 cards is making a fan and going like this and putting them at different spots, because this is really a picture. Clearly seen from far away, from near, these cards are different positions in the pack, and that's it. The next problem we have, we somehow insert the cards and control them by means of a cut or a shuffle. But here is my question. Why do we cut or shuffle the cards? I mean, if we put the cards this way or any other way into different parts, they are lost. Can you lose something which is lost? I do not think so. So to the intelligent spectator, using a shuffle or a cut or a combination of the two after having already lost the cards has something to do with a method. It's a little bit fishy. So talking with Johnny Thompson about this situation, but in a different context, he told me something which I I will apply here, and here's what I do. When I insert the cards like so, I will slide them along the fan. And you can hear the sound it produces. And after putting in, the sound is quite prominent, if you have a silent audience. And what I say here is I look at somebody and say, I know what you're thinking, sir. You think Roberto Giobbi, he is counting the cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and he knows exactly the position of every card. Now I assure you this is not so, but to make you feel better, we're going to shuffle the cards. Now I have a very good reason to shuffle the cards. So we come to the mechanics, actually, of the Vernon multiple shift, which starts like this. We close the fan. I let it drop face up into my left hand, which doesn't matter because, of course, I know that there are the 4 aces. In most tricks, it doesn't matter. Should the occasion arise where I'm not allowed as a performer to know the identity of the cards, I would do exactly the same thing, but face down. The mechanics are the same. But let me describe it first like this. This is the way Vernon taught it originally. We are now going to push the aces in 3 movements. 1, 2, 3. Yes, just going to talk about this in a second. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to take advantage of the so-called plunger principle. We've seen the same thing used by Vernon in his Triumph Shuffle, which was also inspired by the Macmillan plunger principle. So what's happening here is, again, the aces and the block of cards where the aces are inserted stay in the same relative configuration. And it is only the top covering block which slides on top of the other cards and thus creates a sort of optical illusion. So from the front, it will look like this. And well done, you really believe that the cards have been pushed in. So let me go back to this situation and show you from this angle what's happening. The left hand is apparently pushing as the right hand also, it's a 50-50 action, does also push apparently the card towards them, but the forefinger with light friction will cause the cards on the face of the deck to slide to the left, whereas the aces and the other cards remain unaltered in their position. So this is perfectly covered by the grip, which can be considered a sort of Hindu shuffle grip or an elevated dealing position. Watch this over several times. There is nothing more I can add to that. The 90% is really mechanical and 10% is manual and just the timing, and especially your pretending of pushing in the cards. Now I'm in this configuration, covered like that, and I have different options now to strip the cards out. Now, the option I choose, I think Vernon used that at the beginning as well, is to go into a Hindu type of action. Now, rather than pulling the cards out straight, this is true for any strip out technique, angle the cards. I will exaggerate to make the point. Angle the cards, and now you have a perfect grip on the left-hand cards as well as on the right-hand cards. And really, the risk of losing an ace is minimized to almost nil. Start the shuffle and drop the last packet on top. And now comes the last problem I've identified here, and it is that an intelligent spectator following the action of this multiple shift will see a movement, and even well done, he will then perceive a counter movement. And he might think, oh, he's pushing them and pulling them out. So I've tried to technically eliminate that. I couldn't find a solution. So I've done what so often is helpful, resort to psychology and say, because that's the one thing that gets into the mind of the spectator, and that's the only thing that matters. So rather than using sleight of the fingers, use sleight of mind. And here's what I do. I immediately go over and do an in-jock shuffle, an earnest in-jock shuffle, saying the card is lost in the deck, and not only do we shuffle, we also cut. And that final overhand shuffle, which has a total different movement in space, topologically speaking, it looks different, will, in my opinion, at least help to delete the perception of the going in and going out, because that's the final and most important element of the utterance I'm making. And the utterance, the phrase is, we are pushing these cards in 4 different parts, and we are thoroughly shuffling and cutting the pack. Full stop. And the meaning comes across, and the last actions they see is the overhand shuffle and the cut. So, and that's my take on the Vernon multiple shift, and I really think that it's one of the most wonderful and most practical and also safest and deceptive multiple shifts I know. This brings our session on card controls to an end. I hope that you've been able to find some controls that you will be able to add to your repertoire and to your toolbox. But most important of all, I think, are the 7 steps of the control. I encourage you to go back and revise them, and if you really want to install that knowledge and really do something different from what you're already doing, take 3 tricks that involve a control and try to apply the 7 phases I identified with the solutions I gave you to these tricks. And I'm confident you will end up with a better and more entertaining and also more magical and deceptive piece of magic. Best of success.